work ethic always pays off, or does it? If that's true, why do so many of us feel overworked, underappreciated, and frankly, dead inside? Work ethic should ideally be a very simple concept. Show up on time, do your job, put in the hours and get paid. But in practice, it turns out that there is so much more to it. While it should be a clear and positive force, it often leads to exploitation, inequality, and sometimes even harm. This makes the concept of work ethic at its core an ethical dilemma. Because the ethics of work ethic are intrinsically connected to the ethics of work itself. More often than not, work ethic becomes a tool to grease the wheels of the machine, a personal quality weaponized to manipulate us into working more. Work ethic ends up being a catch-all term for everything. Do you feel tired and burnt out? Must be your poor work ethic. Are you struggling to balance life and work? Maybe your work ethic needs some polishing. Do you feel exploited or inadequately compensated for your hours? Well, perhaps if you had a better work ethic, you would not be thinking these things. But work ethic is so much more. We are often told that success is directly proportional to it, that it's the ones with the best work ethic that reach the stars. And sure, that can be true. It is true for a few choice professions, but there are still a few complications with this concept, with our entire notion of success, productivity, and everything in between. If you are enjoying this so far, feel free to drop a like. Hard work is the ultimate equalizer, or so we are told. I think that in the long run, hard work really does mean quite a lot. It's like a multiplier that snowballs with time. And by that logic, everything is a meritocracy. At least, that's how it's supposed to be, isn't it? A society where one's success is solely determined by their efforts and abilities. But anyone who has lived in this world knows all too well that that isn't the case. Because while merit is most definitely a factor, it's far from often the most impactful one. A meritocracy is appealing because it offers a sense of fairness, where a person's fortune is attributed solely to their own skills and no one else's. There is an inherent degree of impartiality and motivation in it. A meritocracy is appealing because of how clear-cut it is. But again, there are issues. Because how do we measure merit? In theory, merit is supposed to be a simple equation. Effort plus ability equals reward. But again, how do we define effort and ability? Is it the number of hours worked or the intensity of those hours? Is it the technical skills someone possesses or their capacity to adapt, innovate and learn? More importantly, how do we decide what constitutes merit? Merit can mean different things in different situations. In a corporate job, one might demonstrate merit by working well with their team, taking accountability and both planning and delivering work on time. In such a setting, individuality is not merit, it's the opposite. In such a case, merit is about being a good member of a group, about fitting into an existing system. Now take that same person and put them in a startup. Here, the definition of merit will shift. Their individuality and drive might be what makes them stand out. The same qualities that are rewarded in a corporation might actually be punished in a startup and vice versa. But while merit is the thing that wins you the race, not everyone starts at the same point. And not everyone has the same resources or opportunities to showcase themselves. Race, privilege, class, education, all of these factors impact an individual's starting position. These factors often end up mattering quite a bit more than merit. So for a meritocracy to be completely fair, everyone needs to have the same starting conditions. But that's obviously not possible. And so, meritocracy, while a wonderful idea, is simply unrealistic to fully achieve. The best we can do is try and reduce the factors that drown out actual talent, But even that is easier said than done, because the system we have set up to reward merit are influenced by biases, both obvious and hidden, and deep-rooted inequalities. Whether it's the connections you have, the education you can afford, or simply how others perceive you based on where you're from, a true meritocracy is almost impossible in practice. I touched on this a bit in the intro, but this element truly sours the whole concept of work ethic for me. See, you work hard for months on end, giving it your all, and when you inevitably get scorched and burnt, it's because of poor work ethic. You work harder than everyone else, yet you don't get the promotions or the raises you know you deserve. You are the first one at work and the last one to leave, but somehow you never quite get the recognition you have earned. There is a common saying that it's always the people who work the most who get the most work. But what does that mean exactly? It's simple. In most cases, the person who works twice as hard as their colleagues ends up being saddled with even more work, even more responsibilities, because they've proven they can handle it, and yet their extra effort rarely leads to extra rewards. When everyone in the room gets paid the same, working harder becomes foolishness. This is why fields like content creation, startup, and online businesses are becoming more and more attractive. If someone running an online business earning $3,000 a month works twice as hard, they can reasonably expect to make twice as much. At its root, everything comes down to compensation. Work ethic, when rewarded, is a wonderful thing. But when it's not adequately recognized, it becomes exploitation. It becomes self-sabotage. Do I really need to say it? Hasn't this horse already been beaten to its third death? Fine, but let's keep it brief. Work ethic and productivity are inseparable, but sometimes they clash in unexpected ways. While work ethic should be a virtue, it often becomes the enabler of overwork. And contrary to popular belief, more work does not always mean better results. There are so many studies that show that we can focus for only so long before our productivity drops. But the work ethic productivity myth ignores this, pushing us to do more and more than we are capable of. Instead of working smarter, we work harder, often to greatly diminishing returns. The paradox is simple. When work ethic goes unchecked, it can harm the very work it's meant to improve. Ultimately, productivity is not about how many hours you put in. It's about how effective you can use the hours you've got. We fool ourselves to think that simply doing more, working more is the key. We trap ourselves in this cycle, thinking that if we just push harder, the results will come. That's how you end up bald, unhealthy, and depressed before you turn 30. It's not reasonable. This pressure we put on ourselves. We have our foot pressed to the pedal so much that it often takes us slamming into a wall of burnout to finally stop. This toxic cycle is not just counterproductive, it's obviously harmful. The glorification of overwork, the hustle culture, the relentless push for more at all costs has been widely criticized in articles and studies, many of which I've linked below. These resources delve deeper into how this toxic productivity mindset negatively impacts our health, well-being, and everything really. Often, a much needed counter-narrative to the work more, achieve more myth. So many of us devote our lives to work, believing that our sacrifices will one day lead to satisfaction. Yet, studies have shown that fulfillment is rarely tied to how much we work. It's tied to the quality of our experiences and connections outside of it. At the end of it all, most of us do not work for our own happiness or satisfaction. We work because we have to, because our survival depends on it. And so, in the context of fulfillment, work ethic can act as a multiplier. When tied to work you genuinely enjoy or tolerate at least, it can be empowering. But when used as a crutch to fill a void of dissatisfaction and depression, it can often deepen the void, leaving us more drained and unfulfilled than before. And so, work ethic becomes a double-edged sword. In the right setting, with the right work, it can be a great thing. But when not, it can just make the work harder. To truly find fulfillment, there must be something beyond work, something out there. It's not a cure-all. When properly valued and rewarded, it can be such a force for good. It can be motivating and empowering. But when misused, as it often is, it becomes a tool for exploitation, perpetuating inequality and toxic traits. The goal is to create a healthy relationship with the work we do, and to do that, we must challenge the systems that weaponize work ethic, redefine success, and prioritize well-being over this endless grind for productivity. Only then can we ensure that hard work truly pays off for everyone.